Hey, everybody, this is Clarence Anthony, and welcome to our next episode of Cities Speak with the National League of Cities. I'm the CEO and Executive Director, and today I am so excited to have a special guest who is here to talk with us about some of the truly innovative projects and programs his city has been implementing. Our special guest is the 40th mayor of Tulsa, Oklahoma, Mayor G.T. Bynum. Good afternoon, Mayor. How are you doing?
Wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I mean, you have been doing a wonderful job with the city, doing innovative things. And that's one of the things that we want to be able to share with city leaders all over America. Because the National League of Cities, what we're committed to is not just to talk about the best practices, but the next practices. And your commitment to making sure that your community is doing that is admired by many. But some of the other mayors are kind of, looking at you kind of squinchy because they're saying he's trying to take my residents. So Mayor, I'm going to, let's just have a conversation because I do think that's a way to get people to understand what your goals are and what you're trying to do. Everybody knows that you're known for your commitment to using data and innovation and bringing people together. And we've watched that over the last couple of years, especially as you recognize some of the history of Tulsa. But during the pandemic, Tulsa used the remote work opportunity that millions of Americans were experienced to an advantage, actually starting an incentive program to attract new residents to come live and work remotely in Tulsa. I will tell you all that Mayor was elected in 2016, running on the platform focused on equality of opportunity. And the city has established the Tulsa Equality Indicators Report, which uses data to measure inequality across many factors. He established the Mayor's Office of Resilience and Equity to implement the Resilient Tulsa strategy. And that you've known for a lot of things, your street improvements, your first strategic plan to address issues of racial disparity. I'm just going to first ask you, because you were on the city council as well, what inspired you to take on such tough issues?
I think it really is rooted in I have a love for the history of our city and have always revered the office of the mayor. My granddad was the mayor of Tulsa when I was born. And so he's been my hero my whole life. I grew up very close with he and my grandmother. And so, he retired when I was 6 months old. And the entire time that I was growing up, if we went to a restaurant or to a movie or to a ball game, people would always come up to talk to my granddad and then would, lean down to me in a very loud, patronizing way and tell me why my grandfather was the best mayor that Tulsa ever had. And so, two things stuck with me from that. One was they generally said the same things over and over again, which were he listened to all sides before he made up his mind. They knew he wasn't trying to climb the political ladder. Even if they didn't agree with the indecision, they knew he was making the decision that he thought was best for Tulsa. I mean, so I had that drilled into my head over and over again as a kid, as far as what people really value in public leadership. And then the other thing was that clearly people really valued the job of mayor. Even before I knew what a mayor did, I knew that clearly it was an important job to a lot of folks. And so when I had the great good fortune to have an opportunity to serve as mayor, I knew that I did not want to, I would have at best 8 years, maybe just 4. Thankfully that I got reelected in 2020. So I do have 8 years to serve. But I wanted to use that time to really try and pull people together from all over the political spectrum and solve whatever the greatest challenges we face as a city might be. And it was really rooted in having been on the council for 8 years and knowing about that great history that we had as a city, when Tulsa had one of the first airports in America. We didn't like people in Tulsa in the early 20th century didn't like the taste of the water in the Arkansas River that ran through our city. And so they built this marvel of civil engineering that was such a big deal that Calvin Coolidge actually opened it from pressing a button in the Oval Office that started the Spavinaw waterline moving. We built all these skyscrapers in downtown Tulsa in the 1920s, not because it made economic sense, but just because world-class cities ought to have skyscrapers. And then when I was on the council, it was, oh, well, which side of the city line is that shopping center going to get built in? Who's going to get the Walmart? Is it going to be us or the suburb? And it felt like we were just kind of managing the decline of a once great city rather than aiming high. When I looked around at other cities that I had a lot of admiration for, cities like Oklahoma City or Louisville or Austin or Denver, like these were cities that were very much focused on the best that the world had to offer and what they were doing and trying to compete with cities all around the world. And so when I ran for mayor in 2016, as you mentioned, I ran a 100% positive campaign, never had anything negative to say against our incumbent at the time, but really challenged our community on two main things. One, to address the life expectancy disparity that exists along racial lines in Tulsa. And two, that we ought to expect more from ourselves than we had been. We ought to be aiming higher and holding ourselves to a higher standard. And that was the best part about winning, was knowing that people in Tulsa did want to aim high if someone would challenge them to do so. And I look at where we are today versus where we were 6 years ago, and I think that's probably the biggest change is today people expect us to be competing with the best cities in the whole world. It's not novel or unusual for that to be happening anymore. And people in Tulsa are upset when we don't win in competitions with great world-class cities for unique opportunities, and they expect us to have the best. And I think when you shift your expectations to that level, you unleash a level of creativity that I think has generation-defining opportunity for our city.
No, it is known by a lot of other municipal officials about your commitment to being a competitive city in a lot of ways. And you're watching mayors all over the country trying to create an initiative that works for their community. I mean, what specifically did you think about in your vision that you said, this is for Tulsa? It may not be for Mayor Holt in Oklahoma City, but this works for Tulsa. What is different that you did in terms of creating your plan?
Oh boy. I could give you, we have so many plans. But I'll tell you one thing that I think, and you mentioned it at the top of the show, and that I think we knew was unique. On the one hand, the time of it and the circumstances were unique to Tulsa, but the reality is not unique to Tulsa, and that is the issue of racial disparities that exist. I will never forget. I mean, the day that my wife and I decided that I would run for mayor, there was an article in our local newspaper about how there was an 11-year life expectancy gap between North Tulsa, which is the predominantly African American part of Tulsa, and the rest of the city. And I thought about, I read that, and at the time, we had two kids under 10 years of age, and I really reacted to it as a dad more so than as a city councilor. I thought about my friends who are raising their kids in North Tulsa and what it would be like to be raising your kids in a community where nobody was actually talking about your kid potentially being robbed of a decade of their life just based on where they're growing up, let alone doing everything that it could to address it. And so one of the commitments that my wife and I made to ourselves when I ran was that I was going to raise that statistic in every speech that I gave in every part of town. The most white Republican parts of the city and the most hardcore Democrat parts of the city. It didn't matter. And what was amazing to me, campaigns can be very dehumanizing for anybody who's gone through one. You know what I'm talking about. That I think one of the best parts of that campaign experience was that when I raised that statistic in any part of town, first, most people didn't know it. It was not widely known. Then they were horrified by it. And then they wanted to know what they could do to help. And I realized that this had the potential to be a real rallying point for our city, to make Tulsa a city where every kid has an equal opportunity for a great life, regardless of the part of town they're growing up in. And so when I came in, we partnered up with the Rockefeller Foundation and their 100 Resilient Cities program. I think we were originally picked for that program because we're in Tornado Alley and we're on a river that floods all the time. We get hit by ice storms. We're very natural disaster prone in Oklahoma. But I convinced them that we've got experts on natural disasters in Oklahoma. What we don't have experts on, and we don't know what to do on, and we don't have a plan for, is addressing racial disparities that exist. And so, much to their credit, they shifted and funded for us to develop the Resilient Tulsa Strategy, which, as you mentioned, it's our city's first ever strategic plan to address racial disparity in our city. But I have also been around government long enough, both here at City Hall and then working in the U.S. Senate for years as an aide, to see that plans get made all the time. And if you don't have people whose job it is to implement them, they just sit on a shelf. And so we created the Mayor's Office of Resilience and Equity, a team of people who come to work every day focused on implementing that plan. And then we partnered up with the City University of New York so that they're totally out of state, totally independent, to do an annual self-audit of inequality in our city called the Tulsa Equality Indicators, to measure how we're doing every year. And people in Tulsa can see if the work that we're doing, if it's making a difference or it's not, across all sorts of different areas of inequality, not just along issues of race. And so we've got the plan, we've got the people, we've got the measurements to track progress. And now we are just plugging away over time. One of the big things that we recognized early on in looking at, that 11-year life expectancy disparity, a lot of people think of it as a public health statistic, and it is, but there are a lot of factors that go into a number like that. And one of the big ones that we realized was around economic development, that you're talking about. It is not a coincidence that the part of our city that has that life expectancy gap is also the part of our city that historically has had the greatest level of underinvestment from an economic growth standpoint. And so we focused all of our economic development efforts for the last 6 years on that part of our city. We've attracted over $1 billion of private investment into North Tulsa, and we've took all of our old city economic development authorities and offices and departments, like 6 different groups, and merged them all into one new entity called the Tulsa Authority for Economic Opportunity. And it's our economic development authority for the city, but it's unique in that its mission is not just job announcements so whoever's mayor can cut a ribbon and pat themselves on the back. The idea behind it is that we're using economic development to create equality of opportunity in Tulsa. So we're trying to systematize a lot of these things that we realize will take time to bring back in the right direction from where they need to be.
Yeah, I mean, you really are identifying some of those social determinants of health
Exactly.
and lifestyle, and providing opportunities and access to everybody to be able to get a good education, to get good health care, water and wastewater systems. All of those things are important to, especially the life expectancy of little kids who
Yes.
may be, see crime at such a young age and what impact that has on them. So, Mary, you're right on in what you're talking about.
Well, and I think one thing I forgot to mention is, you know, we've been very focused on this. Tulsa is not unique in having a gap like this. It's just that most cities either don't know it exists at all because the measurement hasn't been done, or they're not as blatantly transparent about it as we have been. I think a lot of major American cities around the country face similar life expectancy gaps along racial lines in their community. And we're hoping that we can demonstrate here in Tulsa. And the city plays a connecting point in this, but it's a community wide effort. We're hoping we can demonstrate that if a community is willing to be very transparent and very focused on that, that you can really make a difference.
Yeah, and oftentimes we say that we can't measure some of the initiatives, but what you have been able to show and indicate is that we really can. If we have a fourth grade education in 2021 in our community in certain areas, in certain neighborhoods, 4 years from now, it may be 7 years, and so I think that this is something that we're going to talk about at the National League of Cities over and over again, because residents want to be able to see outcomes from their investment, and I think you'll be able to really tell that story. And so I really appreciate you talking in detail about it. One of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit is the New Tulsans initiative and the Gathering Place, and how those programs are helping the city accomplish the goal of greater inclusivity. How are you using that program?
Well, the I think they're both people who are listening to this can't see the smile on my face the minute you mention those two things. But after I was elected mayor, I convened a group of data analysts and human services statisticians because I'm a giant policy nerd, if that hasn't become apparent already, and got them together and basically asked them, if you were mayor for the next 4 years, what would you be focused on? Where can I make the greatest impact? And what they told me in that meeting was so powerful. They said, the greatest impact that you will make as mayor, for good or for bad, is how you engage the immigrant community, and it's in particular the Hispanic community in Tulsa, because it's the fastest growing community in our city. And 20 to 30 years from now, Tulsa will be a majority Hispanic city. And so you can either start to engage them in the leadership of the city and build the generation of leaders who are going to be running our city quarter century from now, or you cannot, and they won't be as prepared as they should be when those days roll around. And so that led me to establish what we call the New Tulsans Initiative. And the idea behind that is that we want Tulsa to be the most welcoming city in America for our immigrant community. And so it is focused on everything from education and job creation for our immigrant community to lowering barriers to citizenship. We found that we have over 10,000 people in the Tulsa metro right now going through the citizenship process. A lot of them, you hit legal barriers that are very expensive to work through. And so we've partnered up with the YWCA of Greater Tulsa to pay for those legal expenses for people who are going through that process, so they don't have to worry about legal expenses being a barrier to becoming a United States citizen. We also found that we have a really substantial number of people who are coming to Tulsa from other countries around the world who have very advanced degrees or job certifications, but they are in a foreign language which may not be easily interpreted by employers here in Tulsa. And so they're not getting credit for it. I mean, I know in particular of PhD chemists who moved here and were cleaning hotel rooms because no one could translate their diploma from their homeland. And so we have partnered up with local nonprofits and philanthropic foundations, and we're using American Rescue Plan funds to translate all of those degrees and job certifications so that these folks who are coming from all around the world who have already done the hard work to develop this knowledge and these qualifications can deploy them here in our city. We became the first major city in America in Oklahoma to host a citizenship ceremony every month at City Hall. And that sounds like, maybe not a big deal. I say selfishly, it's a great thing for us. Anytime you're feeling down about the state of public discourse and partisan division in our country, I would beg you to go to a citizenship ceremony and you meet people from all around the world who've risked everything they have because they still view the United States, and in our case, Oklahoma and Tulsa, as these beacons of freedom and opportunity. And it just gives you so much pride in our country and for us in our city. And it makes you want to live up to the expectation that those folks have placed in your community. And so for us, that's the New Tulsans Initiative. Another big thing that you mentioned, though, is the gathering place. And the gathering place, it is the greatest park gift to any city in American history. It's a $480 million park, though calling it a park really doesn't do it justice. It's on the banks of the Arkansas River. It's about 100 acres in size. It's designed by Michael Van Valkenburg and Associates out of New York. But I think the key is the gathering place for us is not a trophy park. The $480 million in funds that were raised for that park were not raised because Tulsans wanted to show off. Those were raised private funds, every penny of it, because Tulsans recognize that so many of the things that we relied on historically to create community are challenged right now. It's never been easier to only get your news from somebody who's going to tell you what you want to hear. People don't necessarily go to the store as much as they do. They can shop online. Civic association attendance is down. Church attendance is down. All these things that we relied on in the 20th century to create community and to remind ourselves that while we might have a political difference with somebody, we can still see their humanity. All of those things are being disrupted right now. And so we can either accept that, well, I guess we're just going to be more divided and solitary in the 21st century than we ever have been in the past, or we can find new ways of building community. And for us in Tulsa, the big thing that we've focused on are parks and outdoor spaces to create experiences that draw people from all walks of life, different nationalities, different religions, different political preferences, who can just have great experiences together as Tulsans and let all those other causes for division stay by the wayside. And the gathering place is admittedly a very expensive way to go about doing that, but it is something that we have seen it work. You go there any day and you've got kids from all parts of town there with their families, and their parents aren't messing around on their phones. They're watching their kids have these amazing experiences at that park. We've been very fortunate. It's won just about every architectural award that you can internationally at this point. We're very fortunate to have such a strong, vibrant, philanthropic community that gets the importance of community building here in Tulsa.
It just reminds me of when I was a mayor in Florida, when I would have a tough day dealing with residents. And I would go to the elementary school and get on the floor and read to kids. And it would just bring back my life.
Yep,
because
exactly.
I've been dealing with adult issues, and there was so much love there. But that is important in terms of that initiative. The piece on the initiative also just reminds me of you're bringing people into the country, but more so you're making residents feel as if they are a part of the community and that Tulsa is their home.
Yes.
And that's a place I want you here, and I want you to be able to work and raise your family. One of the things I wanted to move to is this program that you developed, and we highlighted it, the National League of Cities, in our future work program. It was very creative, the Tulsa Remote Program. And I wanted to ask you, because it is about attracting new residents, new folks who know they can work from anywhere. And clearly it's going to boost your economy. It's going to create jobs. How did the idea for this program come about? And what did the process of making it a reality look like? Because it sounds easy, but it is not. And I've read all the articles, and that's why I said to my team, I got to get Mayor Bynum here. I want to find out how he did this.
Well, yeah, first of all, I give all the credit in the world on Tulsa Remote to the team at the George Kaiser Family Foundation. We went through, I won't name the company, but a very high profile corporate relo opportunity that every major city in North America was fighting over back in 2017, 18. I think anybody that's been involved with cities knows the opportunity of which I am speaking. But we put together what we thought was a very competitive proposal for that company to come to Tulsa. And of course, we for us, it was as much about going through the exercise early in my time as mayor, seeing how we stack up with other cities. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? At the end of the day, we didn't get the headquarters opportunity with that company, but that company has built 3 facilities in our city since then. So I feel like we won by losing in that almost. But one of the big things that came out of that process was the team at the Kaiser Foundation came to me afterwards and they said, how much were we as a community focused on from an incentive standpoint to get that one company to come to town? And I told them the dollar amount, which was astronomical because it was a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity. And their response to me was, well, what if we focused on remote workers who already have jobs, but they can live and work here? And instead of being reliant on one company, if we bring in 25 remote workers, we're bringing 25 different companies into our community. And so if one company merges with somebody or they decide they're going to move somewhere else, like everything doesn't fall apart. You've built this like web of different companies that have employees in our city. I thought, well, that's fascinating and a really cool idea and would love to help facilitate that however you want. And they ran with it from there. And when they launched it, it got this, I think, a lot of media attention because it was Tulsa's the city that will pay you $10,000 to move to its city. Almost kind of, I think the worry that they had at the foundation, and I certainly had, was like, it made us look like we were just reeking of desperation. Like, we'll pay you $10,000 to move to Tulsa. What we found, though, which was really cool, was the people who ended up getting accepted into that program, they were not doing it for the $10,000. That program has a more stringent acceptance rate than an Ivy League college. I mean, so many people applied for it. And for the people who were accepted into it, not only did they have to be very impressive in their own right, but they had to be willing to play a part in giving back to this community. The foundation did not want people who would just come here and hole up in an apartment for a year and collect their $10,000 and then leave. They wanted people who wanted to come here and help shape the future of the city. And by and large, that's what we've had through the Tulsa Remote program. I will say a key thing for that with us, even pre-pandemic, that I'm grateful for. You can't expect people to move to your community through remote work, no matter how much you're offering from an incentive standpoint, if you as a community have not already done the work to make it a great place for people. And that is something that I really give a lot of my predecessors in this job credit for. Tulsa has spent the last, now 20 years, it will be, investing billions of dollars in voter approved funds to build quality of life enhancements in our city. And that's everything from our concert arena that's been the National Arena of the Year 2 of the last 4 years. 1 year we lost out to Staples Center in LA. The other year we lost out to Madison Square Garden in New York. That's building a lake in the Arkansas River. That's building a museum for the greatest collection of American art and history west of the Mississippi. That's building USA BMX's national arena here. So many other things. But we've focused on building a community and a city that is great for the people who live here. And so all of a sudden, when we're not having to worry about spending money on deal closing funds and corporate payoffs to get a company to please come to our city for X number of years and we'll give you millions of dollars to do that. Instead, we're going to invest those millions of dollars into unbelievable public amenities. And then the remote people who can work remotely, who want a very low cost of living here in the heartland of the United States with through the roof public attractions and quality of life. That's our secret sauce, if you will, that gap, the low cost of living with high quality of life. And then you had the pandemic hit. And I mean, obviously none of us saw that coming, but that took this idea of remote work. And suddenly it wasn't sort of this fringe thing that was being done in the tech industry. Every professional in America that works at a desk was engaging in remote work all of a sudden. And so we've had, I think at this point, thousands come here to Tulsa through that program, and they are making a tremendous impact on our community.
So you mentioned briefly about long-standing residents, those that have been there, and sometimes those residents can say, "Whoa, city is spending $10,000 on an outsider to come here. I'm sitting here." How are you handling that in terms of those residents that feel like you need to reinvest in them as Main Street businesses or neighborhoods that would feel they've been neglected in the past?
Sure. And I will say, I mean, I know that there are a lot of states and cities that have started a similar kind of program where it's publicly funded. We are very fortunate here in Tulsa that that $10,000 payment is privately funded through the George Kaiser Family Foundation. And so we are able, as a city government, to focus our resources on making Tulsa a safe city with great quality of life for the people who live here. And so we are setting the foundation for making Tulsa an attractive place for remote workers. And then the foundation is going out and really reeling them in with the program itself, which is, again, it is as much a marketing device as anything else, because it gets people's attention when they hear that there's a $10,000 payment. But the people who are coming here, they don't need the $10,000, and the folks who get selected for that program aren't doing it for the $10,000. All that being said, I mean, do you still hear that criticism or concern? Yes, but I think my response to that has been that, and this happens with anything that you invest in as a city government. There's always a yes, but what about this other thing? And my response to that is always, we're capable of doing more than one thing at a time. I think people underappreciate, especially in a city of Tulsa. The city itself has 400,000 people. We have 4,000 city employees, $1 billion annual budget, and we're implementing the largest streets improvement program and the largest economic development capital improvement program in the history of the city simultaneously. So we're doing a lot for people in different parts of the city beyond just this program. But having a program that helps spread the word around the country and around the world about the great opportunities in Tulsa is a benefit to everyone in Tulsa. And I guess that's the other thing that I would point out in response to that. When you have someone who comes here that works for, let's say, Apple Computer, they are getting paid by a company that is selling products to people all around the world. But yet their paycheck is coming here to Tulsa. They are spending the money from that paycheck in stores in Tulsa and bringing that into our local economy. And that's one of the, I think great things about programs like this and remote work in general is that you're growing your local economy by drawing in those outside revenue sources into your local economy through the paychecks of the people that work in those companies but live in your city.
Mayor, I had Mayor Holt on the podcast.
Oh, yeah?
And David talked about how great his city was and that it's the best city in Oklahoma and his new convention center. He went on and on and on. man, I got to get both of y'all on this podcast and duke it out a little bit, because I think I got to figure out how I get that $10,000 or some friends of mine,
Right.
because you have been able to really inspire and motivate your residents to want to reinvest in the community and to talk about its past, but also talk about its future. And so my final question is this: what grade would your grandfather give you as mayor? Since everybody said when you were a little boy, he is the best mayor we have ever had. So what would Grandpa say about you being
Well,
your role as mayor?
well, first I will say I'm glad that you had a chance to talk with Mayor Holt. He's actually one of my best friends. We were rookie staffers together on Capitol Hill 20 years ago, and it's kind of amazing that we ended up being mayors of our hometowns at the same time. And so it's exciting to have one of your best friends be the mayor of the next town over. And we work together all the time on stuff and have really tried to change the dynamic from the silly little sibling rivalry that existed between Oklahoma City and Tulsa historically, and find ways that our two cities, our cities are not big enough to ignore each other. We need to be working together to compete with major cities around the world. As to my granddad, I certainly would not venture into grading myself, but he's biased. He says he thinks I'm the best mayor the city ever had, but I am his grandson, so I would
Well,
hope he would think highly of that. But he's 95 and still very active. And he called me up the other day because we have been very successful in attracting federal funding opportunities through the American Rescue Plan and the Build Back Better Regional Challenge. And he called me up and he said, "Boy, you need me to give you a duffel bag or something for all that money the federal government's sending you? I don't remember us getting all that when I was mayor." So he's still holding on to the way it was back in the 70s, but I think he's really pleased with how things are going in Tulsa right now, and that we're trying to build on the great things that his generation of Tulsans did, really using that as inspiration with this generation, seeing that we have a high bar there, that previous generations, what they've left us in the city that we've inherited, and we want to leave it better than we found it.
well, you should tell your granddad that the National League of Cities wasn't as powerful back then. It is the organization that helped to deliver all of those things. And with that compliment from your grandfather, that is one of the most important recognitions, that he felt that you are the best mayor. And if I were you, I'd take that, drop the mic, and say thank you, and go. Because man, public service is really tough these days. But you are one of those leaders that many people talked about, and we wanted to have this conversation with you because we want to inspire other municipal leaders throughout America. And it's often said, if you want something done, get a mayor and they will get it done. So Mayor Bynum, thank you so much. And I look forward to connecting with you more often.
Thanks for listening to City Speak with Clarence Anthony. If you like the show, let us know. Share this episode with your friends and make sure to subscribe. We're curious to hear what you think, what you want more of, and how we can improve. If you have feedback or an idea for a guest you'd like Clarence to sit down with, send us your thoughts at cityspeakpodcast@nlc.org. Join us next month for a new episode. Like and subscribe here or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.